Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to this other video for the Latinx and Kidlit blog. I'm Sonia Alejandra Rodriguez. I'm a contributor to the blog, and I'm joined here with Dora Guzman, who will tell you a little bit about herself and about the book we're discussing today.
Hi again, my name is Dora Guzman. I'm a bilingual reading specialist K5 as well as a literacy adjunct and another contributor for the Latinx and Kidlit blog. And today we're going to talk about the 2011 Pura Belpre Award winner, Grandma's Gift by Eric Velasquez.
Yeah, and it's the winner for illustration. So we'll talk a little bit about the story and we'll talk a little bit about the illustrations. But Dora, do you want to tell us what the book is about real quick?
Yeah, so Grandma's Gift is, we were talking back and forth about how to categorize it, right, for a genre. It's based on Eric's life experiences, right, with his relationship with his grandmother growing up. So Grandmother's Gift is essentially a story about a little boy, which is Eric in this case, and he spends the day, right, with his grandmother. His grandmother actually goes and picks him up from school, right, almost like the middle of the day, like, hey, we're gonna do something fun. And so they not only go to el mercado, to the market, because they're gonna make pasteles, which is a food that is very common in Puerto Rican culture. I don't know how to make pasteles, but they mentioned arroz con gandules, and that's a little bit more familiar for myself. And then she takes him to the art museum in New York, which I think is the Metropolitan Art Museum, if I'm not mistaken. And he connects with one of the portraits there, Juan de Pareja. And yes. So throughout the whole story, there's a little bit of mix of English and Spanish in the text itself, but the whole book is essentially about, you know, his experience with his grandmother, right? And not essentially a gift. So here's kind of where she picks him up from school. And it reminded me of like the times where it'd be like super exciting, right? When somebody would go and pick you up from school in the middle of the day for nothing important really, just to hang out. Yeah. But yeah, essentially that was the story of it, right? He just made the connection with this portrait and this artist. And really just spent the day with his grandmother. And I know you have another book of his as well.
Yeah, so one of the books that maybe we can also talk about is Grandma's Records, which like is similar, or I think it adds on to this like autobiographical, semi-autobiographical experience as like Grandma's Gifts. But I think one of the things that I like about Grandma's Gifts in particular, or even just about Eric Velasquez's stories, is that they're very much of this like origin story for how he became an artist, right? Or how he like found himself. Even right in Grandma's Gifts, before this, we were talking about how that experience of going to the museum and finding a particular portrait, like to him, it was a sign like I could be an artist, right? I could do this. And it was also a connection to culture, to his like Afro-Latinx culture. And so maybe I can show the portrait that's in the book and then talk a little bit about that. And so what I'm sharing here is the review of Grandma's Gifts from the Latinx and Kidlit blog done by Lila Quintera Weaver. So I'll link that into this video so you could read the whole thing, but I just want to show the images. So hopefully you can see this. And so these are just some of his art, right? And so this is the one that Dora was talking about at school, right? Dora also mentioned they're going to La Marqueta. And I hope you can see like Eric's like specific style. Earlier you said, Dora, that it, off camera, right? You said that it looks very like portraiture, right? And it does, it looks very like lifelike. The colors are very vibrant. And so this is the portrait, right, that Eric sees, Eric as a person, but also in the book sees at the museum.
Yeah, and it reminded me, like, again, that style. I think it's like, you probably know more about this since you met him, right, with his art, but it's like that oil painting style, right? And as soon as that portrait came into Grandma's gift, I noticed, I'm like, oh wow, I can see where his inspiration came from, because that is all throughout Grandma's gift, and it looks like it's also throughout Grandma's records as well.
Yeah, let's see if there's more images. So I think like what's important about, that's a little bit about the author illustrator. What's important about Eric's work, both in Grandma's Gift and in Grandma's Record, right, is this connection to identity, to not only like as identity to the self in terms of like your culture and your family, but also identity like as an artist and as a creator. I think is super important, because in Grandma's Records, and I keep like picking it up, no. In Grandma's Records, the story is so much about spending summers in El Barrio with his grandmother and learning about music, right? Learning about like plena and combo from his grandmother, just from like listening and just sharing the records and learning a little bit more about her and having to have left Puerto Rico, and how he then makes that connection from like his grandma's interest in music to his own like interest in art, right? And so I really appreciate that about his books. And so in Grandma's Gifts, right, it's very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar, the connection with like his grandma creating, right, and going through the process of making the pasteles. And then the same thing with the artwork, right? And I got the same theme come out from Grandma's Gift, is that connection of like identity, but then also like that, you know, you are here because of what your ancestors, right, were able to do, right? You are, you know, a representation of your ancestors. And I really, I loved how he made that connection, right, in a city, and that the artwork was also very well represented, right? And that's the power of representation, that was able to see himself, right? It's like, oh wow, an artist who looks like me, right, who shares that same culture, drew this and has it in a very, you know, prominent museum. I can do that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I was about to say something similar, right? That we talk so much about how books are important because there's this opportunity for children to see themselves represented, and how meaningful that can be for children, right? And we talk about popular culture, right? TV shows and being able to see them represented. But I like that Eric Velasquez here gives us this moment of like, he went to like a museum and he saw himself in this like what is supposed to be like a prestigious, right, we can get into like exclusionary elitist space, right, but he saw himself like represented. And I think like that was like, I feel like we all have these like pivotal moments of like, this changed my life. This changed who I thought I could be, or what I thought of my life and my potential. And so I like that such a dynamic moment can be captured like so beautiful and so like it feels very like loving in a book that can be passed on to children.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it just, his grandmother gave him that experience, right? So we talk about home literacy and home experiences, right, even at the elementary level, and looking at like, wow, this is what his grandmother introduced him to, right, and connected him to. And he chose to illustrate and write books on it in the future to share his story, which I'm sure there's many similar stories.
Yeah, I want to share some of the images from Grandma's Records, because that's the book that I have on hand. But I think it's I mean, it's the same style that you see, right, in Grandma's Gifts, and it's a very unique style to just Eric Velasquez's like body of work in general. But there's just like some images that I think are just super beautiful, right? Every time he like talks about the grandmother, like she seems like a very loving grandmother, just dancing, hand on the heart is super important. In this video, right, to just in this book to like represent what was left behind in Puerto Rico, right? They sing what is that song in Mi Viejo San Juan, right? And so like they put the hand on the heart, right, to represent what was left behind, what is still there, right, what could still be. But I think Eric's just drawings are so lifelike, and I think that's what I find impressive, and what I find I mean, just like amazing, right? And like picture of like the banda, the band, the combo that they go to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Very lifelike. I mean, I wrote it in my notes, right? It's just very lifelike, and you definitely just travel back in time, right, into his life and into the story. Um, and I like how even I have not grandma's records just yet, but I how even those two texts can be paired together, right? And can kind of, you can follow Eric along, right, into his most influential moments with his grandmother, right, as an artist. So I really like that there's that addition in grandma's records.
Yeah, definitely. I sat on a panel with Eric Velasquez once at the Bank Street conference on Latinx children's literature, and he talked about his art. I think one of the questions was like, how do you create your art? And he came prepared with like a stack of just like sketches and how like the work was put together, and he was just ready to like show everybody just like this process. And I'm always just so amazed, or like just to listen to artists and how, like their train of thought and how they put it together. He was talking about the cover of the Arturo Schomburg book, where Arturo Schomburg is represented and he's like holding a stack of books and his like heel is up. And so Eric talked about how he had to take a picture of himself trying to do like that motion, trying to hold the books so that he could draw it. And I found that so fascinating, right? To like the creativity, like mind and process to like put those images together. And he was just a genuine, like nice, awesome person. And so I was like, oh, this is so cool to see the behind the scenes.
I love listening to illustrators. Just they have a different lens, right? It's not the lens that, that I use all the time, but it's like, wow, you really do see it very differently. And it shows in their artwork, right? It just, you're very much captivated. So I think that these are great texts, right? Not only did it win an award winner for the Pura Belpre for illustration particularly, but just looking at this with readers, looking at the illustrations, right? Talking about how it conveys moods or themes or what it tells us about Eric as an artist and as an author, I think would be an amazing opportunity for anybody.
Yeah, and I thought this from Grandma's Records, I thought this was like a beautiful image, right, of Eric as the character, listening to his grandma's music, which was influenced, and then him as an artist and what that represents, right? It's amazing. And so then I was also going to say about his art that it's very detailed, right? The grandmother's wearing the jewelry, right? That jewelry is detailed out. That they have a dog in here, like you could see every strand. You could see every record, right? There's like a pile of like, I don't know if they're called piles, a stack of records, right? And you can see like every individual like line where it would be a record, right? And so you can really just tell, right, as a reader, right, or if you were to show this to children, right, just to see how much like attention to detail goes into creating like a holistic story, right? That it's important, right? Those little details that may not be present in the narrative, right? But that's what is so beautiful about illustrated books, right? That like the illustrations provide like a deeper sense into like to the story, or even just to like this like semi-autobiographical like point of view for Eric's life.
Definitely.
All right, Dora, thank you so much for a quick chat on Eric Velasquez's books. Grandma's Gifts won the Pura Belpre medal in 2011 for illustration. We talked a little bit about Grandma's Records, which is also just as an amazing book. But thank you so much, and thank you all for watching.
See you next time.